Shana Tova once again. By the time Bobby arrived, the football game had already started. "Why are you so late?" asked his friend. "I couldn't decide between going to temple and going to the football game, so I tossed a coin," said Bobby. "But that shouldn't have taken too long," said the friend. "Well, I had to toss it 35 times. I'm not sure Bobby's intentions were exactly right from the beginning of his little exercise. In fact, when signing a contract, one will often find the phrase "acting in good faith," implying that one is sincere in their dealings and not trying to defraud or deceive the other person. On this Rosh HaShanah, this Jewish New Year, what does the phrase "acting in good faith" mean for us? It ought not be based simply on the flip of a coin. What does acting in good faith mean for the social contract between each of us as human beings? Truth be told, I worry deeply for the world in which we live right now, as I see so many people living in anything but good faith. So let's define good faith for our purposes as Jews, or at least for the sake of this sermon. For me as a Jew, it means living out the tenets of my faith. At the core of those tenets is love. Love for each and every human being and for humanity as a whole. This is my good faith known as Judaism. My sermon today is simply this: if one calls themselves a Jew, one must live in good faith. And our faith demands, in fact, it commands and centers itself on loving one another, even when we disagree, even when we have differences, even when there might be pain between us. That is part of the contract we make with each other and the world as Jewish people. For here's the truth, as has been said so many times: religion is what we do when the sermon is over. Will we live in good faith this afternoon, tomorrow, next month? I will propose to you today that love is the only way, and it is the Jewish way. Hence, love is our theme this entire year as a synagogue, if you haven't noticed already. When I meet with young couples who are about to be married, I ask them always how they resolve conflict. Put more bluntly, I say to them, "Tell me what happens when you have a disagreement." I pose that question to all of us today as well. When we have a disagreement, do we lead with anger or do we lead with love? When our child has made us absolutely crazy, pushed every button we have, and we cannot take one more minute, do we discipline with rage or we discipline with love? When our employee has made the same mistake 10 times and we need to reprimand, do we do so with respect and care or shame and ridicule? Our Jewish faith is very clear, my friends. If we say we love someone, that's not good enough. We must show we love by our actions, by the things we do. There is even more. If we take the watchword of our faith, the central prayer of our people, the Shema, and we look at what comes directly before it and directly after it, the message of love is crystal clear. The prayer before the Shema tells us that God loves us. And we respond, "Shema Yisrael, we love you too, God. You're the only one for us." But God responds with the Ve'ahavta. Don't just tell me you love me, show me. Love me with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your soul. Teach your children diligently about love. Think about loving on your way when you wake up and when you go to bed. Only when you do that, only when you speak of love through your actions, will Ani Adonai Elohechem, will I be the Lord your God. You see, love is acting in good faith, in good Judaism. People will often say to me, "Rabbi, I'm not very religious, but I'm very spiritual." If you love because your Jewish faith teaches you to do so, then you, my friend, are not just spiritual, but you're acting in good faith, which makes you religious. Our world needs more love. Each of us has the immense power to love, if only we would tap into it. Loving is one of the greatest gifts God has given us. When we love another human being, that love can be transformative. When we hold somebody's hand who is hurting, no words need to be exchanged, for the gesture of love itself is profound. We gather today to think about our relationships one to the other. We gather as a family, as friends, as a community. How can we learn to repair the hurt? If we lead with love more, not less, some of the pain and suffering we experience due to broken relationships will be mended. Acting in loving ways can be a balm to the wounds that bleed. Loving requires us to often go against our own instinct when we're riled up, when we're angry, when we want to lash out. I know nobody here can relate to that or on screen. This is just in general. Tapping into our love place that resides deep within our hearts is a barrier against the anger coming out in ways we will regret. If you're angry at someone, just lash out. But if you have that barrier of love, it will stop the anger, and you can say, wow, I'm angry, but I still love this person, so I have to think about how I'm going to respond to them. And this isn't to suggest that one shouldn't be angry or have feelings of resentment or even be upset. But the way we respond to those feelings ought to be through the lens of love with those we love. Otherwise, what's the point of being in love? If one perceives themselves as a loving person, either in relationships, as a parent, or just in general as a human being, and yet they don't act in loving ways, then the title of being a loving person is a bit of a misnomer. Acting in good faith is not a legal concept for us on the high holy days, but rather a spiritual mandate to take us to a higher plane of living. Remember, religion is what we do when the sermon is over. So let's love more. At 40, Franz Kafka, the Jewish-born author, who never married and had no children, walked through the park in Berlin where he met a girl who was crying because she had lost her favorite doll. She, her mother, and Kafka searched for the doll unsuccessfully. Kafka told the girl and her mom to meet him there the next day, and they would come back to look for the doll together. The next day, when they had not yet found the doll, Kafka gave the girl a letter written by the doll saying, "Please don't cry. I took a trip to see the world. I will write to you about my adventures." Thus began a story which continued into the end of Kafka's life. During their meetings, Kafka would read the letters of the doll carefully written with adventures and conversations that the girl found adorable and fascinating at the same time. Finally, Kafka bought a new doll and brought the girl this purchase, telling her the doll had returned to Berlin. "It doesn't look like my doll at all," said the girl. Kafka handed her another letter in which the doll wrote, stating, "My travels have changed me." The little girl hugged the new doll and brought her home. A year later, Kafka died. Many years later, the now adult girl found a letter inside the doll. In the tiny letter signed by Kafka, it said, "Everything you love will probably be lost, but in the end, love will return in another way." While karma is not necessarily a Jewish concept, what is a Jewish concept is midah keneged midah. Essentially, what goes around comes around. I'm deeply worried, my friends, deeply worried about the hate I see in the world. As many of you know, I sit on the Orange County Human Relations Commission, whose duty it is to track hate crime. And the elevation of hate in our county is frightening. Next week, I'll speak about anti-Semitism, but hatred of Jews is not the only area of hate on the rise. What I see and what I deplore as much as hate groups, of which there are many, is the hate of one individual against another. I believe such hate is putting very bad energy into the world that will come back to haunt us all. The great Disney song, Colors of the Wind, reminds us, and we are all connected to each other in a circle, in a hoop that never ends. How does the sycamore grow? If you cut it down, you'll never know. We are cutting down the forest of goodwill, good citizenship, good neighborliness. Soon there will be no more people to cut down, for we will all be reduced to a desolate, flat forest of loneliness centered on self-righteousness. We ought not as Jews post hateful things online about another human being and think that energy won't come back to harm us. We can't say horrible things about our leaders with whom we have profound disagreements and claim we are Jews of good faith. We most certainly can disagree with people. That's the Jewish way. But it must be respectful, on point, and not about the person's essence as a human being. We must constantly ask ourselves, as Jewish people, do my words and my actions reflect the love of humanity and of humans that is at the core of my Jewish faith? Yes, there are evil people in the world. The Jews are well familiar with them, and they need to be called out. But not every leader, in fact, I would suggest most leaders, politicians, or people, or half of the country, people of different interests or political parties, don't qualify under the title of evil. It's enough already. Knock it off. How are we ever going to solve the problems of the world, adult problems, if we don't act like adults? Adults, our good faith demands from us. For those who fill their mouths and computers with hate, I'm here to tell you it's not the Jewish way. Disagree on policies, disagree with comments, but agree that every human is created in God's image and is deserving of your love. That is us living in good faith, our Jewish faith. The Talmud tells of two rabbis arguing fiercely with each other whose disagreements could have caused a deep rift between them. But all was okay in the end because there was mutual respect and care between them as human beings, because they had a love for humanity, both children of God. And the Talmud quotes the Bible by saying, "V'diglu alai ahava," and God's banner of love is over me. Each of us would do well for our spirits and for each other and for the world if we would love those with whom we disagree, or at the very least be respectful and thoughtful even when we disagree. To let God's banner of love be real in our lives, not just a sermon on Rosh HaShanah, but a light that guides us, particularly when we are feeling dark. If we as a Jewish people are an Or LaGoyim, a light unto the nations, then we need to set the example for how to behave in this world. And then we will have put positivity into the world, and it will not come back to haunt us, but rather to bless us. When we sing the Shema each service, we are saying, I love my Judaism, I love my family, I love humanity. You cannot have one without the others. When we say the Shema and then live out the words of the Ve'ahavta, we will be Jews and Jewish families living in good faith, our Jewish faith. We will not leave such commitments to the flip of a coin, but rather a solemn promise to ourselves on this Rosh HaShanah and to our God. Let's renew our contract with each other by asking ourselves every day, as a Jewish person, do my words and my actions reflect a love of humanity and of humans that is at the core of my Jewish faith? Let us resolve to answer yes this year, 5782. Amen.